All right, perfect. And again, I just want to reiterate, this is the Working in Legal, the Tech Experience conversation. I am your host, Alyssa Cole, and I'm an emerging talent recruiter here at HubSpot, who specifically helps recruit for the legal internship program. We have a great panel here today, folks that are joining us that work within the legal team here at HubSpot from a variety of different areas. So I think you all are going to really enjoy this conversation and have the opportunity to learn a lot as well as ask questions at the end. Now, for those that aren't familiar or super familiar with HubSpot, and you may be wondering what we do as a company, I just want to share something really quickly. So HubSpot is a leading growth platform that's on a mission to help millions of organizations grow. Now, how do we do that? We do that by building a software and systems that empower businesses to transform the way they attract, engage, and delight customers. So what I like to say is we provide like a one-stop shop by way of the different services and systems that we offer so that small to medium-sized businesses are able to set themselves up for success. So that's just a little insight into what we do as a company. For the purpose of this lovely conversation today, we're going to be speaking to some of our members of the legal team. So what I want to do is I want to kick it off by allowing each person on the panel to introduce themselves and just tell us a little bit about their background and what your current role is at the company. What we'll do is we'll start off with Mike, and then we'll do the popcorn method to keep it fun.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yeah, my name is Mike Jones. I work here in the legal operations department at HubSpot, but it was a bit of a journey getting here. Went to Temple Law, started chasing ambulances after that, doing slip and falls, car accidents, etc. Really found myself disenchanted with the practice of law, and then became a recruiter. Recruited at the agency side, and then found myself lucky enough to join HubSpot as a recruiter specializing in attracting talent to their legal department. Made some great connections here. Eventually started working on contracts for HubSpot on the vendor side of the house, and negotiated those contracts before moving over into our legal operations department. So it's been a bit of a journey, but I'm sure everyone else here has a similar weird story. I'll send it over to Steph, who's next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Crocker. I am one of our attorneys on the employment law team here at HubSpot. I am based out of South Florida, and I also did not have a straight path to where I am today. Before going to law school, I worked in human resources. I worked as a paralegal. I knew I was always interested in the employment law space, but I didn't feel like I just didn't feel like I had the right background to be as efficient as I wanted to be in my role. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go to law school. So I went to law school. I thought it was going to give me a ton of knowledge. I found out it did give me a ton of knowledge about how to think about things. It didn't give me all of the knowledge I thought it was going to give me about like how to practice law. I had to actually go out and do it to understand all of that. But once I started practicing, I just really loved the space that I was in. I continued to work in like the HR space. I was an associate at a law firm, a labor and employment associate. Then I worked in-house at a construction company. I was at another tech company before I came to HubSpot, and I've been at HubSpot for 2 years. Oh, sorry. And I will call on Charlotte next.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Hey, everyone. So yes, my name is Charlotte, and I also did not have the straight path as well. Before I went to law school, I was a paralegal for about 3-4 years. And after doing that, I still decided to go to law school. And after law school, I did not end up in a law firm. I actually ended up working for the government in New York City, and I was there for about 7 years. I started off as a litigator, and then I was able to transfer into the corporate space. So what I do now at HubSpot is I do privacy. I'm on the privacy team. I work a lot with our commercial legal team, working with customers and negotiating our privacy agreements and technology agreements. Before that, I was at another tech company before that. And before that, I was in an aerospace aerospace company. So as you can see, I did not have that traditional path, but I would say this, each role that I held in at my previous employers, it actually helped build the knowledge and the skill set that I'm able to use in my current role today. So I would popcorn over to Jason.
Thank you, Charlotte. Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Perry. I joined HubSpot in November 2020 as a corporate legal specialist. Prior to HubSpot, I worked at large law firms in Boston for about 13 years. Most recently, I was a senior corporate paralegal at Foley Hoag LLP in Boston. Prior to joining the law firms, I graduated from Amherst College in 2004, and I never went to law school, but subsequently worked at law firms since then, and currently a corporate legal specialist on the corporate team. And our main function is to administer the board function for the company, as well as do SEC compliance for publicly traded companies. And I will, with that, popcorn it over to who's remaining, Alyssa?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's everybody. Thank you all so much for sharing. As you can see, we have people that are coming from all different places, different directions. Some people completely were not expected to even go this route, but made their way into this space. So I hope that that is encouraging for anybody that is tuning in, that may be trying to figure out what area of law you want to pursue. Do you want to be in-house? Do you want to work at a big law firm? Whatever that may look like. So thank you all so much for sharing your responses there. Now, my next question, and I'm going to popcorn this over to Charlotte, which is, how did you know you wanted to pursue a career within the legal space in general?
Yeah, so go keep it so short. I kind of went back and forth for a long time, I would say, since I was in high school, maybe because I used to watch like TV shows and, watching Johnny Cochran. So I had like those, like, I guess, Hollywood ideas of what it was to be an attorney. But realistically, I would say once I started working in the law firm as a paralegal, that kind of solidified for me that I wanted to be a lawyer. Even though I was working at a big firm, I thought that the work that I was doing was pretty interesting, and I was always fascinated with just working with lawyers. And I know that not everybody would say that, but I was actually fascinated by it, and that's why I decided to pursue a career in legal. And also, I felt like it's just one of those careers where you just learn so much. I just love the fact that it's just open, and it helped me become a better writer, a better speaker, how to read things more clearly. That was one of the gifts I loved about being in law school, and even working as a paralegal, to be honest with you. So that's what kind of drove my decision to go to law school and be a lawyer.
You're on mute still, Alyssa.
Of course, gotta love Zoom. I was saying thank you, Charlotte. And I was saying, is there anyone else that would like to chime in there?
I'll hop in as the one who got really disenfranchised with it. So I think I took a criminal law class in like 7th or 8th grade, and then we did a mock trial and fell in love with the notion of the adversarial system. Went to Temple Law because they're great at trial advocacy. Loved everything about being in a courtroom, but the paperwork killed me. And so I will say, on behalf of in-house teams, what's revived my interest in practicing in the time I got to practice here is that I don't know about the rest of you, but law is a lot more creative in-house than I even imagined it as a kid. And then in law school, as much as I'm a weirdo who loved law school, but that practicing in-house is a lot more creative than anything I got to experience before, and then during my education, and then as a litigator.
I love that. Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing that. Before I move forward, I just want to check, was there anybody else that wanted to chime in? Or
I'll just chime in really quickly, which is to say, for me, I think part of it, I was always, like as a kid, curious and analytical. And I was really looking for a way, I think, to organize my thoughts and my ideas better. And I felt like law school would kind of guide me in that direction. And I think it has helped me hone in on those skills.
Absolutely. I love that. So we have a paralegal perspective, someone that was very young and experienced a mock trial, which we love, and then just the natural curiosity and, being a type of person that had strong analytical skills. Those are all great things. So I appreciate you guys for sharing those. Now, I want to shift into what it's like working in the tech space, right? Because I hear all the time talking to law students, and talking to full-time attorneys that it can be very, very different. So I want to ask this question to Mike. What made you decide to join a tech company instead of working in-house? I mean, in-house instead of working at a typical law firm?
I have a terrible answer. I think probably a lot of the law students who are here can relate to when you're in law school, there's a lot of sort of being pushed to firm life. And then, you're really about worried about OCI and hitting firm numbers and making a firm. And so I didn't actually, as I said, I don't know how many people end up being a plaintiff's car accident attorney by choice, but like that wasn't where I intended to go. It got me a lot of the experience that I wanted to do. And then some people make a fantastic career out of it. And for me, a lot of the business development wasn't that. I can say what I love though about being in tech now that I didn't think about then, which is that the colleagues that we get to work with, the environment we get to work in, the ideas that get pushed around, the idea of constantly iterating and getting better. And I think folks can relate in law that there's a lot of, it's always been done this way, so we should continue to do it this way. You don't get as much of that here in tech. There's a receptiveness to fresh ideas, thinking about a new approach and doing things better, even if it's the same sort of idea process. So that's what's kept me here, and I never want to leave. So
I love that. I love that so much. Anyone else want to chime in there?
I would say it was similar for me. I had started my career at a big law firm and then worked in construction. And I think both of them were like very traditional kinds of atmospheres. And tech was the only space where I was seeing like legal departments, which can be very traditional. Tech was the only space where I was like seeing more people that were looking like me. They were talking about really creative ideas like AI. It felt like a really different place than I had experienced the law in. And now that I'm here, I feel like it's really innovative. We have a hugely diverse legal department. It felt really natural to me. I'll tell you the other thing, honestly, that really was like the icing on the cake for me. I worked in a lot of jobs where I was in a suit every day. And today I can work in clothes where I feel comfortable. I'm like sitting at my desk in an environment where I'm not like all stuffed up and can't move my arms. That's made a huge difference for me too.
I'll jump into coming from large law firms for 13 years. It's a very rigid environment. You're held to billable hour requirements. It's very demanding. It's very high paced. I think the transition in-house has been similar, but a lot more relaxed, a lot more at your own pace, a lot more deliberate about refining processes and your method of working, as opposed to just duplicating processes over and over again. So that's been really cool for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think for me, similar to like Jason and Stephanie and Mike, I came from like that traditional environment, and it wasn't always, it was great. I think it was excellent, like learning ground. But at the same time, I felt like tech offered a little bit more flexibility and creativity, which is something that I really did enjoy. And also I saw a lot of people that looked like me. It felt really comforting. And of course, the clothes were comforting. Like I didn't have to be in a suit and tie, or, I say suit and tie, but, suit, a blouse, whatever. But the point is, I was able to be myself, which is what I loved about being in tech. And I just love the fact that we're always creating something new. We're always trying to figure out how can we make things better? How can we make things work? And that is what makes me love HubSpot and love working in the tech industry.
I love all those responses. I want to reiterate some of the things that you guys said, just feeling comfortable, having representation, flexibility, creativity, just being a more relaxed environment. Um, Even on the outside, being in a different space, in recruitment, I still feel the same, working at a tech company, there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of opportunity to be creative, a lot of opportunity for cross collaboration as well, and to be able to make a larger impact on the company. I feel like, so I love what all you guys said. It really resonated with me. So I wanted to just chime in and say that, but I love that so much. The next question I want to ask, as you guys are thinking about your overall legal career, no matter, where it started, I am curious. I'm going to start with Jason. What would you say was a pivotal moment for you in your career journey? And how has that impacted where and who you are today?
Thanks, Alyssa. My answer to this question is really easy. The pivotal moment in my career was when I joined HubSpot. I know that might sound cliche based on why we're here, but HubSpot actually came and recruited me from the large law firm that I was working at. I was very much situated during the beginning of the pandemic and had no intentions of leaving. Such that, joining HubSpot was something I had to sort of learn and wrap my head around. But the decision to do so has been great. It's been a great transition from law firms in-house. And yeah, and I've enjoyed it.
Anyone else want to chime in here?
I guess because I think maybe this will come up as some advice for folks later on. But so I started here as a recruiter, and the opportunity, the biggest moment for me was I had the opportunity to partner with our director of legal operations, who's fantastic. We're considering pursuing some certifications related to diversity, inclusion, and belonging for legal departments and law firms. And so as a recruiter, it was an opportunity for me to do some exploration on what would be required of that. Not to get too in the weeds, but it ultimately involved conversations about what outside counsel we're engaged with, and how they're pushing our diversity, inclusion, belonging values amongst their own ranks. And so that opportunity of itself is what connected me to legal operations, which then ultimately got me to some of my areas of responsibility that I have now. And so I think a big part of at least the HubSpot experience, the tech experience, is the internal mobility, that if you're valued and good here, then you will find opportunities elsewhere. And so being able to move from recruitment to legal, reinvigorated my career in a way that I had never imagined it would.
Love that so much. I want to get into a question that I think a lot of folks on the call may be interested in hearing more about. I'm going to ask this to Stephanie. What are some current legal trends that you think law students and legal professionals should keep a close eye on right now? What's kind of like the hot topics, the things that's got the legal space really talking and super engaged? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I think it's something that I had mentioned before. I'd say it's AI, and I don't think this is specific to legal. I think this is the hot topic everywhere across the board. But I think it's a hot topic in legal too, because we're finding AI that's like shortening processes, getting us answers that it would otherwise be taking us hours to figure out the answer to. It's sending us case law that's relevant that, again, we'd be manually researching for hours. And it's also creating some challenges in the legal space, specifically in the employment law area. Recently, there have been complaints about the misuse of AI and how it's creating discrimination issues. So I think it's really helpful as a tool, but it's also coming with some challenges. I would say that's probably top of mind for me.
I'll also jump in and mention, and AI is a big one, to reiterate what Stephanie said, but I'll also mention ESG for those who aren't familiar. It's environmental, social, and corporate governance, which is largely handled by the corporate teams. A lot of publicly traded companies these days, and with the internet and with the nature of how information spreads, investors in the investor community, they know a lot about companies, what they do, and how they're impacting the globe. So it's important for us as a publicly traded company to constantly be on par with our competition and make sure that we have similar practices and that we disclose those in all of our SEC filings.
Yep, and I would definitely say for me, not because I am in this group, but privacy is really big right now. I would say the majority of a lot of our customer questions concerns privacy issues, such as what are we doing with their data, how we're securing their data, et cetera. And then of course, there's an like AI component to it as well when you're dealing with building products and how we're building it with privacy in mind, and also how we're looking at it from an ethical standpoint. So AI ethics. So I would say that also privacy is pretty big. And when I was in law school, that wasn't really taught then. So it's just amazing how much this area has exploded in the last few years. So that's something that I think is pretty big.
Awesome. So AI, ESG, privacy, I think that's spot on. I myself, just as a typical person, I think about privacy all the time, especially like online. So I can see how that is probably like challenging, like trying to navigate, right? All of the things, but definitely, privacy. And I know that's like a really big interest that a lot of folks have right now. So I think that was great. Thank you guys for sharing some of those trends, and hopefully folks joining in, you keep those in mind. I have kind of like a random question off whim that just kind of came to mind that some folks on the call may have an interest in. For those that have attended law school, was there any specific courses that you felt like really set you up for success in your career? And if so, what were those courses?
No. Uh, uh, I mean, I think everyone probably has some pretty good foundational elements in their legal education. Certainly, if there's an area of law that interests you, you should pursue those courses. Obviously, I wouldn't load up on a ton of criminal law if you're looking to do transactional work, but I think go where your interests are, go where your passions are, and that will take you to where you want to be. I'm sure other people have different opinions on this, but I think generally speaking, try and be well-rounded and then do what you like.
I would say for me, it was probably civil procedure because coming out of law school, I went into litigation. And I'll tell you, during civil procedure, I was like, there's a book on it. I'll just find the answers. Don't have to memorize this stuff. Not necessary. When I got into practice, sure wish I didn't have to find all that time flipping through those pages to find the answers. So it's litigation specific, but I think that's an important one.
Yeah, so there wasn't a privacy course when I was in law school. The closest thing I remember was internet law, and I don't remember that course at all, actually. But I would say what I enjoyed like torts, I enjoyed civil procedure, because when I did graduate from law school, I was practicing litigation for a couple of years. So I felt like those courses were helpful. We also had like during my third year, like transactional courses, but the majority of the courses that I took in law schools were really like just litigation based. And I thought it was helpful. It does give you that foundational skills for sure, but once you start practicing, you realize it's just a totally different beast. And you just pivot when necessary.
That's so much. Thank you guys for sharing that. So I think that I have just one more question. Well, a few more questions, but my next question also is a random one that's kind of coming to mind. Was there anything that really caught you off guard when you came into the tech space? Something that like you may have been a little skeptical about, but you discovered, that you were completely wrong about it when it came to working in legal? If so, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I would say for me, a lot of the time when you're working like in a firm or other in-house spaces, you're not always like thinking creatively. You're kind of like applying the law really strictly. And it's like, okay, this is exactly what the law says. This is the like quickest way to achieve that outcome. When I got to HubSpot, I feel like people were like, wait a second, does this make sense? I understand, like, this is how people have been just doing it for years, but does this make sense? Does it make sense for the business? Does it make sense for the values that we hold at HubSpot? Is this the right thing to do? And I had never seen that anywhere before. So for me, I think that was the like big standout thing.
Yeah, I agree. I would say like coming into the tech world and being able to have a voice and an opinion was definitely different from where I was before because as Stephanie said, it was, hey, this is what it is, this is what we do. And now when you move into HubSpot, it was like, wow, we want to make things better. They're not sticking by this is how we've always done it before. Let's continue to do it that way. And I think that to me was just an eye opener because I was practicing for a good number of years prior to going into tech, prior to entering HubSpot. And that was just like, I had to change my whole line of thinking because of that. So, and I was very happy with it, to be honest with you.
I definitely jump in and would say that my time at law firms, I was very much tied to my role as a paralegal, whereas when I came to HubSpot, that evolved into much more beyond that actual function. It was about evolving our community and the culture within the company. There's a big dedication to diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So we have sort of responsibilities to the organization aside from our professional roles.
I'll just tack on that the biggest difference, I think there's a lot of pressure in firm life in particular, and in law school, because you're all weighted on one final exam for the most part, to be perfect. And not that we don't strive for excellence in everything that we execute on, but that we're open to iterating. And that's actually reflected in my favorite HubSpot interview question, which is tell me about a time you made a mistake, because we all make them and all mistakes can be corrected. And so I would say that I think I feel free. One of my favorite things about working at HubSpot is I feel free to try. And that if it doesn't go well, you're going to get supported and you're going to get to do it again and you get to improve on it and you're going to get to collaborate on it. And so for me, that's one of the single greatest things about working at HubSpot, other than feeling like you can be yourself here.
Love that. Thank you all so much for sharing your responses to that. My final question is, what advice would you have? What advice would you have for law students who are just still trying to figure things out? They're trying to figure out what direction they're going to go in for their legal career. What would you say to them? We'll start it off with Jason.
I think the advice I would give is to go with your heart. And again, that sounds cliche, but a lot of people will give you advice on it being better to go in-house first, or it's better to work at a law firm first. Really assess who you are as a person, what your goals are, how you like to work best, and assess your opportunities from within yourself and not necessarily the advice you get from outside. It's important when you start to really have a firm footing and be happy. That way you can excel and really pursue the knowledge that you need to grow within this field. So
I would agree with that completely. I would say even if you're at a company like HubSpot where work-life balance is valued, you're always going to spend a lot of hours working every day at any job. So I think it's important to find an industry, obviously, that excites you, a practice that excites you. But I think it's important too to find an industry where the people that are in that industry also excite you. You get all kinds of people in every industry, obviously, but generally as a whole, I think I'm a lot more excited about the people in the tech industry than I was about people that I worked in a law firm with. So I think follow your heart in terms of not just the job, but in terms of the people, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them.
Yep, agree. And I would say this, like, don't feel like you have to be pigeonholed into one thing. If you're in an area that you feel is not working out, then try to make that move. Don't try to feel like you have to stick it out. I felt like that the first couple of years of my legal career, like, oh, I have to do this. You don't have to. I would say go where, as others has pointed out, where you feel like you would enjoy the work, because being a lawyer, no matter if you're working in the tech industry, no matter if you're working in a law firm, government, it does require a lot of hours and it requires a lot of work. So, lawyer, paralegal, anytime you're in the legal field, it just requires a lot of you. So you want to make sure that you're in something that you do enjoy. And you also want to make sure that you also enjoy the people you're working with, because they're the ones you're going to be interacting the most with. So, yep, agree with that.
I'll just plus one all of that and say that I found myself in varying points in my career running from jobs instead of to a job. And if you're at the point in time where you have any amount of selection, go to where the people excite you and the content of the work is at least tolerable. Because the people will make the work better. And so you will make connections that way, and you will find yourself where you want to be.
Such great advice from the panel. Thank you all so much for sharing your advice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get into the Q&A session, and we do have, I see a list of questions here. So my colleague Jill, she's going to help me out here, and we're going to kick off the Q&A.
Amazing. So it looks like one of the first questions we got was from Landon, asking, what sorts of skills do you all wish you had developed in law school, knowing that you wanted to ultimately pursue a career in legal technology?
I can jump in. Oh, sorry.
Nope, sorry. Go on, Jason. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Mine's is quick. So I always thought that law was completely qualitative and that, I could leave math behind. And even though I was decent at it, that I wouldn't have to do it anymore. But the reality is, if you join corporate, you really need to be qualitative and quantitative. You're communicating complex financial issues with lawyers and putting them into words. And so I would say just refining both areas of yourself professionally is important.
I would say for me, honestly, it had to do with like confidence. I feel like when you're in law school, it's constantly like, how do you compare to all of your peers? This is the only right conclusion that you could have come to. I really wish that I had like taken the time to really just like remember how I had gotten where I had gotten, and that it wasn't through doing exactly what everybody else did or thinking exactly how everybody else thought, but it was through my hard work and my dedication. So truthfully, I think not necessarily like a substantive skill, but I would have developed like earlier in my career the confidence to do what I know I'm capable of doing.
I would say also law school can take you away from, to Jason's point about the qualitative versus quantitative, that whether you're at a firm or in-house, you're still supporting ultimately likely businesses. And I would say two things. One, they're all data-driven. And so I find myself now responsible for a software platform, and I don't have a particularly advanced tech background. I'm analyzing data, really wish I hadn't skipped Excel classes. And now I also find myself working with wonderful peers and solving for a business. Businesses and the people in them talk like human beings. And I feel like I would also just remind you, as you get in law school, you read a ton of bad writing. You have to write in that fashion, and you find yourself disconnected from the real world. So it's not really a skill, but just remain anchored in what makes you you, because that will carry over into how you interact early on when you're most risk adverse as a brand new lawyer. You want to remain connected to the part of your humanity that got you to where you are.
Love that. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Let's go to the next question.
Awesome. So it looks like the next question is for Mike. So it says, Mike, that you said that law is much more creative in-house than at a firm or even as a litigator. How so? And can you please elaborate?
I think it's two things, and maybe this is a bit of a personal experience, but you at the firms I worked for, you have someone who tells you, something needs to be written this way. You fill out the same forms in the same way, you make the same recitals, and admittedly, in the litigation context, there are more rules constraining you, and then when you start doing transactional work, it's sort of if you can dream it, you can draft it, and so. And I find here, in particularly around tech, that the people who push decisions are people who are dreaming new ways for us to solve for our customers, dreaming for new ways to make our workforce more inclusive. Whatever the challenges that they're solving for, they're bringing creativity to it. And so as an attorney, or someone supporting attorneys, you have to find creative ways to solve for those people who are dreaming. And so you can't, the creativity is sort of forced upon you, and because you're solving directly for the business and you're not sort of in a risk adverse position at a firm, it's just for me, it's been a wildly different experience, both in the supervision and then how you approach problems.
Amazing. Thank you for that thoughtful answer, Mike. The next question is from a 3L who's seeking post-grad opportunities. The question is, do you think that I should try to keep the track of garnering experience in traditional law and later shift to tech, or should I try to jump right into tech from post-grad?
Ooh, great question. I'll take that first. I would say, because my experience was a little not the traditional path of what they would tell you in law school. The traditional path, as we all know, you go to law school, you work in a law firm, and then you go in-house, right? But now there's been a shift and a change from that. I will say try and develop those skills. Like there's a lot of places like tech companies that have internship programs, or sometimes even have like post-grad internship programs. You could see if you could apply to those. Definitely see if you are open to applying, as you may start off as like a associate counsel, which is usually someone who has like less than like 2 years experience. That's okay if those opportunities are available. But on the other hand, sometimes those opportunities not available as much. So I would say just try not to get stuck. If you don't get into the tech, and if you don't, let's say, get into the law firm, try to see, okay, if there's another way, like maybe working for government, maybe working for the city, like just, non-for-profit. Like don't feel as though if you just don't get that job that you think you should get right out of law school, that means that's the end of it. No, you could go somewhere else, develop those skills, and then try again. That's what I did. And I think that's something that tech companies do look for. They love diversity. They love people who come from different backgrounds. So if you don't make it the first try, you could try something else and then get back in.
Just as putting my old recruiting hat back on, because but one of the hiring managers I used to work for here, she knew she wanted to do tech transactions. That's what she wanted to do for a living. She wanted to work in tech. She wanted to work on deals, and sometimes coming out of law school, it's hard to find those jobs. And so she took an opportunity working for Deal Desk at Oracle because it got her legal adjacent and in a tech company. And so I think everyone's story here is we all got here somehow. And so if that's the place you want to be, put yourself in the place that you want to be. But like, for I think many of us, our journey here was we just chased good people, good opportunities, and it got us to a place we're really happy at.
Awesome. Great. Thank you all so much for those responses. For the next question, it's a little bit similar, but want to see if anyone has any other thoughts to add to this question. Is it more beneficial to do legal research on tech topics or get hands-on experience as a legal intern during the semester while they're in law school?
I would say any kind of hands-on experience you can get is really, really helpful. My experience was that I spent a lot of time in law school reading and trying to understand, but it wasn't until I got into practice and had to apply what I had been reading that it all well, didn't immediately come together, but that it all like eventually gave me the foundation for all of it to come together. That being said, if that opportunity isn't available, I do think the research about tech is really great, because when the opportunity to potentially get involved in the tech space arises, you then have some knowledge, you have some background, you have some information.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. For the next question, how fast-paced is working in a legal tech space in comparison to working in a firm?
I can jump in here and just say that in a firm, you're subject to a billable hour, which means you are recording what you're doing for every 6 minutes of your life. So in that sense, it's high paced in the sense that you need to be doing something all the time. Whereas I don't think that's the goal in tech. I think the goal is to more do something of substance and something that will impact your team and your team's goals in a short amount of time if you can, but to more so enjoy your life and be a whole person all the time. And I'm not saying that because I'm partial to working in-house. I'm saying that because it's important to know that like there's a big difference at a firm when you need to sort of justify every 6 minutes of your life. And you'll find that out when you start billing hours. It's something that I didn't enjoy at all, but some people do.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Yeah, even though I worked at a firm years ago, and at that time it was a paralegal, and I do remember, yes, it was just nothing but billable hours, and that was just very annoying because not everything you do is billable, and it was just like, oh my goodness, am I billing enough? And all this anxiety would come in. So that was one part of it. But being in tech, I would say it's just really, it is fast paced. But it's just really also like more relationship, like you could build relationship with your teams, with the business, and some things are maybe not going as quick. You could communicate that with them, but however, it is fast and they want an answer quickly. And sometimes they want an answer that's to a complicated question, and you have to like get that answer to them in that language. Like you can't just provide a complicated answer to them. And that also takes time as a lawyer. So I would say that, both have its pros and cons kind of thing. But it's definitely a fast pace in the tech world.
Awesome. Thanks so much for those responses, y'all. For this next question, the question is there an even amount of litigation work versus transactional work in-house at HubSpot?
No, it's almost all transactional. Thankfully, we don't have a ton of litigation in our lives, so that's been pretty great. But you'll see some companies though that have folks who are heads of litigation, and it's more the nature of what the company does. But for us, it's almost all transactional.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. For this next question, this person is wondering, how does HubSpot support building community within the legal team?
Well, I would jump in. So I started HubSpot a few months ago, 6 months ago. But what I've observed is we have a lot of forums where I feel like you could be open. You could talk about stuff with your teammates, with your manager, which is something that's great. I also like the fact that we do have, depending on which team you're on, usually you would have like a get together virtually. Now they're thinking of doing more offsites, but so far, we've been doing a lot of virtual get-togethers, and they will have you order stuff online, and then you get to like drink and eat, and you could talk, and you're not talking about work. You're just talking about like just things that's going on in your life or any highlights that you have going on. And I think that's pretty helpful. And it's just really all about getting to know you as a person, as opposed to just knowing what you do and who you are. That's one of the things I've noticed that HubSpot does very well. And I'm can't wait to see like what happens in the next couple of months when we do meet in person and we do have more offsites. I think it's going to be even greater. And also we do a lot of community work, which is something that they encourage as well.
I would also add that we try different things. Like a month or so ago, they tried a program, and I think we're probably going to continue it because people really loved it. But we had all of our legal leads get together and had some individual contributors on the legal team join in and could just ask them all of the questions they had. I think there might have been prompts actually, but you could follow the prompt and get the answers to the questions on the prompt. And then you could ask follow-up questions about like, how did you get here? How did you advance your career? What do you advise? And we do like different events like that where we all get together and we talk. Sometimes there are like scripted questions that we can all respond to and talk about. Sometimes it's more, like creative and in the moment, and you kind of just talk about what you want to, but there's always different events. And with the, like Charlotte said, with the specific teams, it's on a much more frequent cadence.
This might be... Oh, go ahead, Jason.
I was going to mention our that since 2023 we've had the value priorities for the legal and compliance team, which consist of DIMB and culture. And so there's a DIMB champion. I'm one of them, and there's also a culture team. And what we do is we have programming that sort of celebrates those value priorities. So for DIMB, we have guest speakers come in and talk to the team about the importance of diversity. For culture, we've had a really cool sort of a virtual scavenger hunt, where you had to go complete certain items and complete certain tasks, and they were related to sort of wellness and living a good a wellness life. And so those have been really cool things that we do to sort of team build and make the unit cohesive.
And mine's a bit of a micro thing, but I think we're all really good about being cameras on, and it's, sometimes if it's a large meeting or an instructional meeting, then people got to do what they got to do, right? And so not everyone, but when we have smaller meetings, and a lot of them are smaller, that people are really good about being cameras on, which I think fosters a meaningful personal connection to the extent that us being spread out all over the place, we can do that. And I guess if I can pass that along as a piece of advice for folks who end up working remotely, like be cameras on, because it is a way to connect with other human beings. It's the closest thing we've got to a knock on an office door is like, hey, I need a second of your time.
Awesome. Those were really thoughtful responses. So thank you all so much for that. So I'm going to combine this next question with another question that I saw in the chat. The question is, as a 1L with no previous experience in law, what are some things recruiters in this field would be looking for in a potential candidate for an internship? Similarly, a question in the chat was, for those of us interested in HubSpot, what advice do you have from an application and interview perspective? So pretty much any advice for someone who is looking to apply, looking to interview, and then I think specifically for those who might be 1Ls without any experience in law yet.
Alyssa, you do resume review on this, right? So.
Oh, on the spot. Okay, it's like, no, just joking. I was like, oh, this is for me. So I can tell you some of the things that we discuss that we find really great, especially if it's a 1L. You might not have a ton of experience yet. What we look for is somebody that's involved, getting involved on the campus if you're a part of certain associations. If you're not a 1L and you're higher, looking at what your internship experiences have been like, what your interests are. I always ask candidates, so just an inside scoop, I always ask candidates what their top interests are in law. Even if you don't know exactly like the top one, but just what are some of your top areas of law? That is something that I like to see. And then I kind of look at a resume and see, does some of their experience tie to it, or have they went into detail in your cover letter, right, to talk about, what makes you interested in those areas. So also thinking about that, if you don't have a lot of experience, being able to explain in your writing, because that's really important, what your areas of interest are, your passions are, and how it would make you a good candidate for the position. So those are the main things I look for, just like your overall involvement. I think community involvement is really, really great as well. You're coming from undergrad going into law school. So what did you do in undergrad? I do look at that as well. So those are some of the things that I pay attention to when I'm looking at 1L resumes. I hope that's helpful.
I'd also say don't give up. I applied to HubSpot back in 2016 and didn't get hired. 4 years later, they came and found me at a law firm I was working at. And so I'd say, in the meantime, just, you know, pay attention to what we're doing, get involved. We have panels all the time. There's all types of programs that we offer outside of the company. So, pay attention and be involved and keep your name out there if you don't get it the first time.
I would echo that. I also was interviewing for a role that somebody else got. I kept in touch with the hiring manager though, because we had similar experience, similar interests. A couple of years later, she had another spot open up, reached out to me and said, hey, are you interested in this? So I would echo that. Just because it doesn't work out at some point in time doesn't mean it's never going to work out.
And if it doesn't work out, sometimes that's not a reflection of you. Needs change for companies all the time. And so what we don't need now, we may need in 2 years, and you may be perfect for it. So stick to it.
Yeah, when I recruited here, I used to say to people all the time, unfortunately, I get to meet more awesome people than I have jobs to fill. And it's heartbreaking because you meet incredible people. And sometimes, there's just someone who you both interview really well, you're fantastic, and there's just a little bit better experience on one resume than another. And that truly, HubSpot, at least if you get the opportunity to interview here, we're pretty good about staying in touch. We're pretty good about if you reach back out. So just, there are a couple candidates I had the pleasure of hiring that didn't work out the first time around, but we stayed in touch. So stay in touch with your recruiters.
Love that. Love those responses. Amazing. This question is, what is an aspect of working in the legal tech space that surprised you?
Everyone's really nice.
Yeah.
It's a really good place to work. Everyone's really good here.
The biggest thing, one thing for me was when I first joined HubSpot, again, I know I've said this a million times, I came from large law firms. And so I remember about a month into working here, my manager pulled me aside and she said, hey, Jason, you can kind of tone it down on the emails. You don't need to be super formal. You don't need to, you can tone it down. So there's a language that we speak here that's very simple. It's very sort of be yourself. And you need to sort of translate that into all of your writing. And so that's a surprising thing about tech.
Yeah. Oh.
No, go on, Charlotte.
Yeah, I definitely would echo Jason and Mike's point, because you hear so many things about how lawyers work and we're so always formal and we're very strict and stern. But when you work in tech, you realize you're working with really, really smart people, but they're cool. They're on top of their stuff, but the way they do it, they just have this gravitas with it, right? And that's something you respect. You don't have to be stern, and they're not mean. They could get their point across without yelling, without screaming. And that's one of the things I really do like about HubSpot.
And I would say for me, I would add the work-life balance. I never had that in a law firm. In the firm, I never saw my family. I was never home. I didn't have any weekends. I didn't have any holidays. I was getting emails on my honeymoon about stuff that was coming in. So I just was very used to okay, I don't do anything but work. And when I came to HubSpot, it was very much I'm going to take vacation. I was like, yeah, I know what vacation looks like. I'm just sitting on the beach on my laptop. But people were like, no, that's not what vacation looks like. Vacation looks like put your out of office on, don't talk to us, and we'll let you know what happened when you get back. You have a team. You are not going to make or break the team. People can pick up the slack, which was now I'm that shouldn't have been a novel idea, but it was.
I love it. And I love the emphasis on work-life balance and just our culture overall. So I think that all of those responses are awesome. We might only have time for one or two more questions. So I will share this maybe last question. This question is, to cater to HubSpot's partnerships and contracts with other web-based businesses, what is the extent of specialized technical knowledge that in-house legal professionals are expected to have?
You say technical knowledge. So first I would say this: you definitely want to understand HubSpot. You want to understand its products. I think that's very important. I think if you are like, for example, supporting like privacy, you have to know privacy like very well, because when you are supporting like tech transactions and contracts, you really need to understand how the product works and how it relates with privacy. And that's like the legal element of it. So I would say like those are things that's important. It's like coming in and really understanding the company, understanding the products and how those products work and what are customers buying from us. That to me is really important.
Just because I worked on the vendor side, so things that HubSpot is purchasing. So, that team deals with hotels to software to consultants to providing for events. And so there's a whole gambit of things that I guess you have to have a really strong foundation for imagining bad scenarios happening. And so, but if I couldn't be expected, I would hope anyway, to understand every piece of software fully in the same way. And so you rely a lot on your business partners, the folks who are actually engaging with that software to explain it to you. Oftentimes to me, like I'm 5, and then you try and make the best risk-based assessment that you can and protect your client as best as you can.
I'll also throw out that some of the best advice I got from our current CLO, Elisa Harvey Dawson, when she first started, was to just be really honest about what I don't know, and to admit when you don't know something. There's always someone at HubSpot who does know it if you don't, and that's what we rely on our colleagues for. That's the nature of our community. So just knowing what you know and know what you don't know, more importantly, and be honest about it.
Awesome. Thank you all so, so much for those really thoughtful responses. And Alyssa, I will pass it back off to you.
Thank you so much, Jill. I just want to thank the panel again, Charlotte, Stephanie, Jason, Mike. Really appreciate you guys joining us and just sharing your insight, your advice, just being authentic and transparent. I learned a lot from you all, as I'm sure the audience did. Again, we want to thank everybody for joining the conversation today. If you have not applied to the legal internship, the internship application is still open, and it will be open until Friday. So if you still need to apply, definitely encourage you to go ahead and do so. We just shared in the chat some links that'll be super helpful. So a link to the legal internship application. We also have a legal internship website that goes in detail a little bit more about the areas that you could get hands-on exposure to if you were to be an intern here, as well as just some basic information about our hiring process and things like that. So definitely, we encourage you to take a look at that and follow us as well on our YouTube and LinkedIn channels. But outside of that, thank you all so much for tuning in to Working in Legal, the Tech Experience. I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. And again, thank you so much to the panel. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.